One of the main issues I've had in this role is just explaining to prospects who are coming in exactly what we do. We don't sell email. We sell customer retention, and we use email for that. Email is like a hammer. Hammers don't build houses, carpenters build houses, and they build houses using tools. When we think about kind of outbound retention, the way it's working is performance, persistence, and reach. Performance, send a message today, get a result today. Persistence, send a year worth of impressions, serve a year worth of impressions, and affect the repurchase rate over that year. And then reach, which is cast the widest audience you possibly can, right? It's like a three-legged stool, and that's what we're trying to balance over time.
Is 2023 the year you launch the merch store for your brand? If you're looking for a new revenue line and a way to increase brand loyalty and LTV, you might want to consider it, especially when there's players out there like Printful that make it easy to build your brand's line of merch without any of the operational headaches of inventory management or stock forecasting. Printful's product options run the gamut from socks to hoodies to home decor and everything super high quality with printing options that will look amazing with your brand's design on it. If you've got merch on the mind in 2023, think Printful and go to printful.com/enterprise to start creating today. It's all killer, no filler. I'm Eric Dick. This is the D2C podcast, and I am here with head of retention email SMS at Pilot House, Jordan Gordon. Welcome to the podcast, Jordan. On our last podcast, we discussed this concept of switching from low fidelity buckshot segments when you're sending to more sniped segments where you're really sniping in on purchase intent. I wanted you to come back and report on it. And how is this going?
Yeah. Okay. So we tried it on a bunch of different accounts. First of all the click-through rates went up. So like if you're suffering summarize it for everyone quickly in case they didn't listen to the last podcast about buckshot versus sniper. Yeah. Okay. So if you've got a really long intent window, some people do like 180 days up to something like that. It's not even an intent window; it's an engagement window because there's no way it's probably not 6 months of intent unless it's maybe like a really expensive car that they're purchasing. Intent is probably more like a couple months, right? So if you're doing these really long windows and you're putting in less leads into kind of the bucket because maybe you're being tighter on your ad spend in 2023, that means you're kind of, especially if you're doing 2 messages a week for 6 months, you're going to be driving some of those leads away before they would purchase. So we moved to a model where we do a shorter window, couple months, and still message people outside of that 2 months, but it's just a slightly less frequency outside of that kind of intent window. Tried it on
you want less collateral damage. If you're shooting buckshot, you're going to get some collateral damage. You're going to send some people off your list who you didn't want to be there, rather than you with snipers, they get the job done.
We were just in this environment of like low cost of capital, free money, plentiful leads, right? And so this is really about kind of a mindset change of what is a lead to us, So look, some accounts, it's been great, and we're still there. Some accounts we shifted back, and it all has to do, with kind of like the repurchase cycle. And so now the new research I'm doing on this is my guess is that accounts will be more successful with this tighter intent window if there is, this is technical, but like if the people who have purchased, say, 3 times in a year is very close to people who purchased 2 times in a year, meaning like there's this, repeat purchasers will be plentiful, and this will be like a highly consumable product. Well, okay, then the lower number of messages sent will actually probably affect sales more because, it's a very performance-based business. Whereas if there's a longer cycle there, and so to get from 2 to 3 is a longer window, then probably it's more persistence-based and you want to send more educational messaging, etc. So anyway, bottom line, a bunch of our accounts, the click-through rate went way up. and we're kind of leaving it there. Some accounts we've moved back and we're doing more research. And I invite everybody else to kind of think about this.
And is it random about which ones are working better with sniper versus buckshot, or is it really just ones with longer with less intense consideration cycles?
Yeah. Bottom line, I'm doing research on that. So I've got to go through and now I'm running a bunch of segments on a bunch of different accounts. I'm always trying to figure out like how outbound marketing works, right? And so it's like this is the next layer of study under that is, okay, well, now I've got some accounts where it worked and didn't work. I'm going to look and see if I can find some indicators.
When it comes to your reputation, spam scores, things like that, obviously the sniper method is going to trigger things a lot less.
Yeah. So here's why I would move why we did move some people back, because if everybody click-through rates went way up. And some accounts, the click-through rates were chronically low, so this just fixed it, and we're just happy with that. But in all cases, the clicks went down a bit. So the issue is, look, my belief so far, my suspicion is if there is a very fast repurchase cycle, that decrease in clicks is going to have an effect on repurchase rate, because there's going to be more often a click is going to lead to a purchase. Whereas if there's just a lot more browsing that goes on over time, that the decrease in that click is going to have a less of an effect on repurchase, right? Because there'll be multiple clicks required per repurchase. And so the calculation is, look, we brought our click-through rate up. It's now somewhere better. We look at the clicks. This is actually what we're going to talk about today is the metrics funnel and how we would decide if the downstream effect of that decrease in clicks is net positive or net negative. And that's kind of what I brought today.
It depends if you're pulling it forward, I guess. Yeah. How do you begin to figure? I always feel like email marketing. It's a quantum puzzle, because you can put any kind of frame on it. You can't put any kind of frame, but there's all kinds of frames you can put on it when it comes to how you look at the data. So how are you thinking about this next adventure?
Good question. So I got a couple things here to discuss, and before that, let me say that one of the main issues I've had in this role is just explaining to prospects who are coming in exactly what we do, right? Because an important point is here at the Pilot House team, we don't sell email. We sell customer retention, and we use email for that, right? Email is like a hammer. Hammers don't build houses, carpenters build houses, and they build houses using tools, right? So when we think about kind of outbound retention, the way it's working is performance, persistence, and reach. And this is what I'm kind of explaining more to prospects as they come through. Performance, send a message today, get a result today. Persistence, send a year worth of impressions, serve a year worth of impressions, and affect the repurchase rate or influence it over that year. And then reach, which is cast the widest audience you possibly can. Right? These it's like a three-legged stool, and that's what we're trying to balance over time. So let me ask you a little puzzle, a little riddle, okay? So maybe I've asked this before. I hope I haven't. But when would a declining click-through rate be good, and when would an increasing click-through rate be bad?
You haven't asked me this. Yeah, I would just go back to, if you're artificially pulling people not interested in buying into clicking or something, right? When you don't have the intent behind the click, perhaps it might be bad, because you would have a click later that might have intent if you had let it mature more. That's my guess.
Yeah, look, I'll say that's going in the right direction, but in that case, you'd still be having a good click-through rate, which would be improving your inboxing. So, but how about this? When you are doing the hard work of reaching way back and getting the hard-to-reach addresses from, say, 9 months ago, a year ago, and getting them to repurchase, it's going to bring your click-through rate down, because those addresses do not readily click. They do not readily engage, right? So, and Also, if you are just, let's just send a bunch of emails to everything that's just coming in. They just came in through Facebook. Let's just send them an email every day, right? They're super engaged, super into the brand. They just discovered you. You're going to get a ton of clicks. Your click-through rate's going to go up. But ultimately, in this case, your revenue metrics will how your whole funnel works, or how your P&L works will be different in these two cases. So what I want to stress today is that I'm going to give you 3 different metrics to think about to turn your email program into a customer retention program. Right? Make sense? So we think about on our team at the end of the month, the first thing we look at is customer retention metrics. We don't get email metrics. We look at customer retention metrics, which is like how many people are buying again, and also how many stale leads did we convert. Let's say they came in the funnel, they subscribed, they didn't buy in the first month. The ads team did a great job bringing us a lead, but it didn't convert. So, okay, it's a stale lead, converting those, right? That's kind of retained business. So that's the first thing we look at, not related to email channel. So, and the second thing we look at is audience retention, which is how many people have we got coming back? How many eyes do we have on this? Are we growing the number of eyes? Because when you grow the number of eyes, when you grow the number of people who are absorbing your impressions, you will grow your retained business. You will grow your
consideration.
Revenue. That's exactly right. And then finally, the last thing we look at is the email channel. That's the last thing we look at. And as we just described in that little example, if you're looking at your email channel first, if that's what you're primarily looking at, and you're just making your email metrics look better, you might be going after the wrong parts of your business and actually harming your business. That's why you need to look at these things in order. So here's the first
interesting.
Super easy thing you can do. Super easy thing you can do, right? Go to Shopify. And in Shopify, go to analysis, right? Make a report. In that report, you add, it's like sales over time, right? And look at sales over time, but add customer type and customer. So now you got your revenue, you got your customers, you got your customer type, which is first time or repeat, right? So, and from there you can make you've got your repeat business, and you've got your repeat business rate, right? Repeat revenue divided by new revenue. And there you can look at that every month and say, okay, are we doing a good job of bringing back old money and getting it to buy again? Yeah.
What's a benchmark? I know, I guess, no, you probably can't give a benchmark. You got to equivocate. But what's a benchmark for what you could expect from reviving old business?
Well, so look, if you run that report, you'll see it's like, whatever, 25% or something like that. That's very common. But for what we do, often people come in and that number's like 15 and we'll turn it into 30, right? 15%, turn it into 30%. A lot so it's, if you're not doing this kind of right, like if you're not yet thinking about your email channel as a customer retention channel, and you're just trying to get, attributed click revenue by sending to the easy addresses and not really moving the needle, just shifting things around Google Analytics. If that's what you're doing, this rate, you can 2x. It's very simple. And the important point is that changes the whole way your P&L works, because all that happens without extra ad expense. And then you get all this revenue that flows through directly to free cash flow. Then you got a whole bunch of tax problems because you got all this cash flow, right? It alters the way your P&L works when you take that retained revenue rate and double it without incurring ad cost. So that's what you're trying to do. Who cares about your click-through rate? That's what you're trying to do, right?
Without harming your reputation to the point that you deaden your list, which is the other.
So then we'll go one step down. Exactly. So we go one step down now, and you look at audience retention. So how do you know that you're moving in that right direction, right? Where you're okay. I want to get this. I want to get more retained business. I want to have a retention channel. So look, here's Dead easiest way to do it. Go to your GA, go to overview, and you're going to see a thing it's like this big. Total traffic and returning traffic, right? And just write down your total traffic and your returning traffic every month. So every month, write down your kind of new and retained revenue. Every month, write down your total and your returning traffic. Make some rates and watch those rates over time, right? So when that returning traffic is improving, you're going to see that translate into improved retained business over time. And then finally, third thing, you look at your email, SMS, loyalty, all these things feed into that because those are total, that's the whole pie. You're not breaking it down. It's not attributed in any way. So you look at all of your individual channels and so of course you want your CTR to stay strong enough that you know you're not going to have an inboxing problem. But if you see that CTR going down and you see those other metrics improving, well, that's like taking one on the chin for a good cause. And final point on this, when you look at those metrics, you're looking at two things. You're looking at your click-through rate and your clicks. You want your click-through rate. It's okay if your click-through rate goes down if it's in a context of strong clicks, right?
Strong relative to the segment, of the liveliness of the segment in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to have click-through rate go down and clicks go up. And if that ever happens, that indicates, oh, you were definitely not in the inbox. And you've definitely kind of improved things. Alternately, you can see your click-through rate go up quite a bit and your clicks kind of stay pretty steady, maybe go down a bit, right? But you see these further downstream metrics, the audience that you're holding on to increase. And that's an indication, yeah, well, if one person clicks 10 times, it's not necessarily as good as 5 people clicking 2 times, right? So it's okay to see that drift down a bit if downstream you see the audience improving and further you see, of course, retained revenue improving.
And so when it comes to these segments that are unengaged, you can't go ham on them, as you're saying, because you will, damage your sending reputation. How do you periodically, how do you think about approaching these unengaged but still mailable segments? Like, how often are they getting reached?
Yeah. So again, easiest way to do this, right, is just make sure you send to your what you consider your maximum mailable list, which you watch over time. This is something you learn over time by testing. But whatever your maximum mailable list is, send to that once a month. Make sure you got your messages, you got what's going on. You look at your calendar. Hopefully you got a calendar, right? And you go, this is the money one. This is the best message we have this month. Okay, let's send it to the whole list. Right? And that also lets you track over time your maximum monthly send size and see if your maximum monthly send size is improving, which is another way of measuring your audience, right? That kind of audience growth. There's multiple ways. I gave you one way, but obviously there's many ways you can do it. So bottom line, yeah, just easiest way. Make sure you send to your whole list, your whole possible list once a month, right? And maybe if you've got good messages, you can do it twice a month. If you've got a really tough list, maybe it's once every 6 weeks. The issue with that is you don't get that nice monthly number that you compare with your other monthly numbers.
But this is the time you make your hay. You got to be responsible mailers out there. So I don't want to be the first to mention Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but when that time of the year rolls around, you need to have that list primed and you need to make sure that you're in the inbox. Absolutely.
And this, so now is the perfect time, of course, to be thinking about this. You want to have collected, and so here's another way that we think about this, right? We've got you figure out what your mailable list is. We've got our definition of mailable list. It's based on working with all the different ISPs over time. But you figure out what your mailable list is, what you're comfortable messaging, and then you measure what you think your engaged list is. It might be 60, 90, 120 days, whatever it is for you, right? And that there's a ratio there. And you want to track that rate. If that rate improves, right? If you're growing that engaged it's not just it's good to grow the engaged list, but you want to grow the engaged list as a rate of your mailable as well. If those things are both growing and that rate's growing, wow, you're killing it, and you're heading into kind of your next peak season in a really, really strong place. And I mean, you do that there's two inputs. Like, final comment here. There are two inputs into your kind of retention program that will improve all the things we discussed. Sending the right number of emails and sending better emails. And the right number, we've just discussed. If you watch this thing 2 or 3 times, apparently people watch these a couple times. Watch it, write some notes down. You'll know how to figure out what the right number of messages are. And then just send better messages. And all of that will come.
Love it. Easy. There's an exciting offer actually that we're going to be chatting in the conclusion here, but I just have a personal question, because we're actually right now, and we will cut this out if you don't have anything to say about it, but I'm interested. We're on the D2C side. We're sending a lot, right? We're sending our 3 times a week. We're sending the occasional sales email. We're sending our other property, the daily CTA, 5 days a week. If you're not subscribed to that, you should go subscribe to that right now. And we're actually right now just assessing whether or not to move to a dedicated IP. And I was wondering if you have any experience with I don't know if this is actually that relevant for the e-commerce audience, because I don't know that many e-commerce brands that have dedicated IPs, because you're probably not mailing it every day like you kind of need to be. But any commentary on dedicated IPs and their value?
Tons. So before coming here to Pilot House, I was always working on a dedicated IP and a dedicated domain. That was just totally normal. And the weird adjustment was moving to a situation where you were on these kind of shared IPs. And so there's actually, interestingly, there's 2 things that go on. I was thinking about this before this call, actually. There's 2 things that go on. One, when you're on a shared IP, you're competing with other people on those IPs. There's Klaviyo has a stack of 3 different layers, and you compete to get on the better tiers, and you compete through engagement. You want to have good click-through rates, good open rates. Open rates are garbage now anyway, but they're still somehow indicative. And then, of course, ISPs, now they're looking at a shared IP that they score things off of. But look, these guys are smart. Of course, they look at your reply to address. They see your domain in there, so they can still obviously rank you. I mean, I guarantee Gmail is ranking you not only off your shared IP, but off of your reply to domain. Of course they are. So you actually, on a shared IP, it's interesting because you have 2 different kind of people to appease. You have 2 different kind of gatekeepers. It's a little bit interesting, and there's a lot. Whereas if you're on a dedicated, it's all you, and everything you do, you're speaking directly to the ISP. You don't have anyone else kind of influencing what's happening with the ISP. That's really good. I don't know exactly where the threshold is for this. I know there is a threshold when you're sending through Klaviyo where where you're sending through a shared IP, where above a certain number of messages in a send, it starts to deteriorate. And if you were on a dedicated IP, you would be getting better results. So, for instance, if your average send, if your average send was 200,000 addresses, I'm sure you'd get better results on a dedicated IP versus a Klaviyo IP. I don't know where that threshold is. I've never done that swap to figure it out. Have you guys thought through that?
Well, we're honestly just going through it today, and we won't get into too much of the nitty gritty. But the issue for us is the platform we're using doesn't have a very good hybrid situation. They've just told us that they would transfer us over in one fell swoop, which would potentially wreck our business, because we want, other systems we've heard of would be you warm it up over time, where you take your most engaged audience and you warm up your dedicated IP and you send the overflow to the shared IP pool while you ramp up. But the platform we're using has told us they would just do it in one fell swoop, and we just paused it, because if they did that and if we tried to send our nearly 200,000 person list, it would would wreck it. Like, and I just don't understand it. Anyways, I'm griping. I don't gripe on this podcast much, but I'm griping that the solution that they have proposed for switching us over to a dedicated IP might like destroy the newsletter business. So we're going to be pausing that project, dear listeners.
A couple comments. One, it's interesting that I picked 200,000 because that happens to be what you guys are at. I didn't know that. So first of all, I'm certain you'd be better off on a dedicated IP, but the warm up, like when I warm up a new IP, I start by sending to 5,000 people, right? That's my first send. And it does ramp, and it starts ramping pretty quick. But like, that is like from 200,000 to 5,000. That's the kind of drop you have to make.
Yeah. That wouldn't cut it for our advertisers, I don't think. Sorry, guys. Your contract says we'll send it to our whole list, but yeah, all this, the email stuff is so interesting, and there's this like, and I love your perspective on it, where you telescope down from like the metrics, the video game metrics you see on the platform, to looking at as a tool in your broader business, and then that changes again when you have literally a newsletter business where you do have products, but you're really selling the eyeballs and the engagement. So anyways, we'll figure it out. The reason we went with our original partner on this ESP was that we had heard that Morning Brew had been with them and had switched to a dedicated IP. So I'm sure we'll figure it out. There's a little insight on the DTC newsletter business. But let's talk about the next point, because this was actually one of the biggest successes of the podcast. Was when we had Jacob on and we talked about the pilot program. We talked about this group of brands out there who need help, but maybe are, they're a smaller team than might be required by a full relationship with Pilot House. So they created the pilot program, and it's where people can get on paid social buying at a lower commitment, working with a smaller team, a team of ninjas. It sounds like you've put something together like this for retention email SMS. Can you describe it?
We have, yeah. So it's the Launchpad, where we offer performance for less, right? So when I first came here, the goal was, okay, take the stuff I was doing for really, really big companies and boil it down to its most simplest form, right? And port it across accounts, at kind of an affordable price for an SMB. And then after that worked, the companies came to me and said, okay, well, now do it for even less, right? Boil it down even more to its essence. Take the stuff that's just kind of, take it out. So it has, the Launchpad has it's like a lower touch streamlined process. So, kind of like less meetings. There's, look, one of our biggest costs, when you look at through what's costing us, one of the biggest costs is like, 2 weeks later, getting close to the message going out and like, oh, what's the URL? Where's this link? It's kind of like this. Yep. You know what I mean? That stuff is a huge cost. Yeah, it's a huge cost. And if everything's just kind of like the representative is just like typing something in a meeting like this, that's kind of where that happens. So in the Launchpad, there is a form, and so we ask you to go enter the vital information for the promotion, and it's written directly to the ticket, and we've kind of just taken out this stuff that's not what's driving results. What's driving results is the templates. We've kind of built great templates that just work. The segmentation, you're using the same segmentation on the Launchpad as we use for people who are sending, hundreds of thousands of messages. That kind of, so the content and the right number of messages, like I discussed, those things boil down to their essence, and everything else streamlined. You can come for a couple $1,000s a month, get kind of really, 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 really high quality representation. So thank you for bringing it up. We're really happy with it, and we've got some clients, and we're ready for more.
It's exciting. Yeah, it turned into some really great relationships with Rux on the pilot program side. So I'm really interested if there's anyone in our audience out there listening wants some help on email and retention. I think it's a great opportunity to work with this team. You mentioned something about it where part of it is that the control of the frequency is under. To talk about how you think about frequency with the Launchpad.
So one of the things that I'm interested in doing is, I had said performance, persistence, and reach. And we even just discussed a moment ago, understanding how on different accounts, the weighting between performance and persistence in driving results. And I, in my years, have never seen a real proper scientific study on that. I've never seen someone come to the market and say, oh, well, we study this. And so it's always managing the metrics, like I discussed, right? So I want to do, in 2023, a deal with some people who come to the Launchpad. We'll give them a great price. And the difference is, rather than the number of messages over the course of 6 months, it's for 3 months, more messages, for 3 months, less messages, equals the same number, so it's the same deal. But there's a change in frequency halfway through your contract. So we'll give you a good price. The thing about it is having that frequency change and kind of change that frequency for your business. So it's appropriate for a small business who, anything is better. Like if you're watching this out there in audience land and you say, oh my God, any of the things they just discussed would be a massive step up for me, I'd love to study your account. I'd love to improve your business. And while we're doing it, if I can get half a dozen people to do this and do a study, I would love to publish results to the DTC community and say, here's our findings on what drives long-term results.
Very cool. It's on. It's on. If you're listening.
I guess it's on now. It's if you're listening and you want to be part of a study, I want to use you for data, and also will certainly improve your business, and you'll get a great price on the Launchpad.
Unbelievable. You probably get to come on the podcast too. That's the other thing. We'll do a rocket seat podcast. We have so many brands that we've got the pilot project, we got the Launchpad. I love it. More awesome brands to help all the brands out there in the audience. Go to pilothouse.co. Take off to pilothouse.co even, and fill out a lead form. Mention this podcast, mention Operation Launchpad, and we'll get this thing going. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're not getting the D2C newsletter, you can subscribe for free at directtoconsumer.co. And if you want to learn more about Pilot House's all-killer, no-filler services, take off to pilothouse.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.